Boston is no stranger to deadly violence, even when the victim is a teenager. But last week's murder of Jonathan Dos Santos was especially jarring. The 16-year-old was an athlete and a student at McKinley Prep High in the Fenway. He had told some close to him that he was being pressured to join a gang and feared the consequences of saying no. Last Wednesday, while riding his bike down a Dorchester street, Jonathan was shot and killed. Protesters have charged 16-year-old Deshaun Taylor Guinness and 14-year-old Rayshawn Moody in the murder. The teens are being tried as adults and were turned into police by their mothers, a decision that community leaders praised as courageous.
Their mothers are to be applauded for turning their kids in, and we should salute the mothers for doing the right thing so that there's some measure of justice involved in this terrible tragedy.
One man who's spoken out about this murder and the community response to it is Paris Cherry. He was Jonathan Dos Santos' basketball coach and says the youth confided in him about his fear of gangs. And Paris Cherry joins me now. Paris, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So how well did you know Jonathan Dos Santos?
I've been working with Jonathan for about 2 years now as part of the Boston Tigers youth basketball and development program. And, I've been working with at-risk youth in the Dorchester community for over 6 years now. And he was a kid who really, according to the characteristics of a at-risk youth, was a kid who didn't fit that quite criteria. He was a kid who had both parents at home. He was a kid that was very involved not only with basketball, but also football and soccer. He had a great attitude. He always wanted to learn and get better. So it was shocking that, something like that could happen to such a good kid.
What was he like, before we talk about the threats he was receiving and his tragic death, what was he like as a kid? What were his attributes?
He always had a great attitude and a smile on his face. He always was very positive. He worked very hard in the game of basketball, and he really talked about wanting to do something positive with his life. He was always willing to listen. I felt that he really wanted and thrived from the positive adult interactions that we had with him.
So what did Jonathan tell you in the weeks prior to his murder about the pressures that he was under?
Well, he would always ask for a ride after practice from the gym to his house, which I thought was strange because the gym was literally in, 2 or 3 minutes walking distance. Growing up in that neighborhood, I understand a lot of the dynamics that go on. So I asked him, I said, is something wrong? Is someone bothering you? He said, yeah, these kids, they want me to get involved with some of the stuff they're doing, and I won't. And because I won't, they want to, they kept on, threatening me and calling me out via Facebook, and I just don't want any problems. So could you just give me a ride home? And I said, fine. And, if it escalates, let me know, keep me in the loop. And, maybe I should have asked more questions. Maybe I should have digged a little bit deeper in retrospect. And I'm sorry that I didn't catch it. He was just such a good kid. I just didn't see it.
Did you talk to anyone about what he told you? Did you mention it to his parents or anything like that? Or
I shared it with the other coaches, on the staff to be aware of it. That's nothing that's new to us, unfortunately, working with just kids in the environment. And ultimately, again, because he did have a stable background, because he was involved with multiple positive things, we thought that he would be able to get through it, and we just didn't know how serious the situation truly was.
How did you learn that he'd been killed?
I was actually coming home from a basketball workout, and I saw something on Universal Hub that talked about a shooting on Fuller and Washington Street. And I went home, and I said, obviously that was my neighborhood, and I went home, and as soon as I got on Facebook, all the kids were talking about it, and I put a call in to some people in the area, and that's when we found out.
How quickly did you know who had done it? And I should stress that the people who have been charged now, they allegedly did it. They have not been convicted. But how quickly did you learn who the perpetrators allegedly were?
Well, because of my relationships with youth in the community, all of them on social media, on Facebook, and these young people who were charged with the crime were actually friends of some of the young people that I've coached and mentored, and they made some statements on Facebook, essentially admitting to the crime. And
what kind of things did they say when they took ownership of it?
Well, they basically said, we just caught a body last night. R.I.P. JoJo. Almost mocking the situation. And what I did, as well as other coaches and community leaders that became aware of that, is we forwarded all that social media information to the police. And I did so in a real public manner. Right over Facebook, I shared it with William Drost and other law enforcement
This is the
officials.
Boston Police Department. Remind me of his role. I know it's sort of
deputy superintendent. Yep, and he's a great leader in the community and a great person to be able to reach out to when you have this type of information. It's also was given to Crime Stoppers, and again, we did it in a public way because we wanted to make an example. There's a culture or idea of stop snitching that goes on in the black communities, not only in Boston but all over America, and I wanted to put it into that. I wanted to very publicly make a stand and say, you know what? I'm not going to be scared. We're going to demand justice.
Let me ask you about that culture, because I feel, as someone who has lived in the suburbs for years, doesn't live in the city, and obviously I'm a white guy, I feel like I've heard complaints about that culture for years. As long as I've been in Boston, about 20 years now. I know Marty Walsh has, I believe, complained about it. Bill Evans, the police superintendent, has complained about it, but it goes way back. Is it the same now as it was, say, when you were a teenager or 10 years ago? Maybe you were a teenager 10 years ago, but how has it changed, or has it not changed?
Well, I feel like it's gotten worse. With the rap music, it's getting more and more aggressive. It's becoming something that culturally is becoming, unfortunately, more and more accepted based on the interactions and negative idea of the police. As trust in the police erodes, I believe that the stop snitching culture gains more momentum. And when I'm working with young people, I try to explain to them that this culture was designed to allow the criminal element to continue to have power in our communities. And it's not something that is cool, and it's something that we need to culturally, as a collective, really reject it as an idea.
Just to make sure I get you, when you talk about rap music getting more aggressive, you're saying that there are cultural signals sent or cues sent via popular culture that affect the way people behave in real life? Is that
correct?
Okay.
Correct. I believe that on a music level, that there's those in power who want to promote the least common denominator of black folks, and unfortunately, our youth have followed it and embraced it, and it creates a real negative environment.
Let me ask you about some of the things you said on social media after Jonathan was killed, because you were pretty vocal in criticizing at least some aspects of the community response. And I think we've got a couple posts that we can show. One of the things you said, a lot of people that care about the community but trust those whose, a lot of people say they care about the community, but trust those whose actions equal their talk. A lot of our so-called leaders have yet to comment on this tragedy almost a week later. However, they have multiple statements out about police. Shaking my head. Right. Who were you criticizing there?
Well, there's people in the community who portray themselves as black leaders, who particularly like to keep, as the great Booker T. Washington said, the negativity and the faults and the bad things that go on in the black community at the forefront. And I find it surprising that while a 7-year-old kid could get shot down, and a 6-year-old kid could get killed, but yet there's nothing there. But it's all about the police. And I believe in the black community, we need to have positive relationships with the police. We most need it, and it's almost designed to keep us in a negative place.
So let me just push you a little bit more. I'd love to get you to name names. I mean, are there specific individuals who you think fit that description?
Oh, without a doubt. There's an individual with the Blackstonian, Jamal Crawford, who has, really, and again, it's nothing personal,
He's
but
been
I
a
care
guest on
about
the show, yeah.
Right, I care about the community. And, this idea that the white man or the white devil, in his own words, is responsible for all the things that go on in the black community only serves to make people really angry. It's really divisive because, as you know, with the civil rights movement, it's always been people from outside the community who's helped support us. So, I think we need more love as opposed to hateful rhetoric.
You also, I think, strongly suggested that the recent focus on police brutality, lethal police brutality that's resulted in the death of many young African Americans, in a way is a distraction that helped enable Jonathan Dos Santos' death. And I want to read one more thing that you posted on Facebook. You wrote, "These kids was lost while y'all was blaming the police for shooting someone who had 40 charges and shot the police at close range." That's the gentleman who was recently killed by Boston police. While y'all was defending Michael Brown, who died in Ferguson, even though he was on tape committing a felony. While y'all was blaming the white man, those two teens was loading up those guns. That strikes me as very provocative stuff, and I'm wondering what response you've received.
I've been talking about this stuff for a long time, and before Jonathan's death, the response that I got from a lot of the other black leaders was pretty negative. My response doesn't fit into the narrative that is out there right now. That there's the police against blacks, the systems against blacks, and you know what? There is systems that are against us, but you know what? I believe that with hard work, I believe with a positive attitude, that you can overcome anything. And I refuse to adopt a losing mentality, and I refuse to let my community adopt a losing mentality. Yes, we understand the traps that's set there, but I'm about solutions. If a kid picks up a gun or a kid picks up some drugs and sells it, he's fell into whatever trap that was designed to put him there. And ultimately, focusing on things that, if you did a statistical breakdown, you looked at the black-on-black murders versus murders by police in the last 30 years, statistically, it wouldn't be close. So why do we put all our energy in something that is not as major as something else?
Paris Cherry, thank you for coming in. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you again, and my condolences.
Thank you.